How to recognize a changeling. A changeling baby is unfriendly, unhappy, and mean. They are often beloved by their Fae family, so to return your real child, follow these instructions true. Pick up your changeling baby and place it in the oven. That piece of text is from an upcoming indie metroidvania title, a game which depicts the history of conflict between humans and fairies. This is Rusted Moss. Rusted Moss is an apocalyptic metroidvania featuring a physics-based grapple hook. The standard metroidvania double jump has been replaced with this grappling hook, which gives this game a unique creative style of movement, especially when it comes to backtracking and gaining new abilities. This game features a number of different guns that you can use to fire at your enemies, and even includes this interesting modular buff system which alters the way you fight them. All of these factors come together nicely to form a well-crafted gameplay loop, but this wasn't the sole reason why I enjoyed the game's demo. I would attribute that to this game's fantastical and realistic war narrative. Rusted Moss begins with our protagonist Fern and her companion Puck. Fern finds herself waking up in this industrial landscape known as Mossy Hills. Puck informs her that there'll be some people after her soon, and that the two of them need to travel to the top of a mountain to meet someone simply known as the Seer. They must bring this Seer any pieces of an artifact named Titania that they find along the way. Armed with a railgun, Fern and Puck traverse the metal-infested wasteland, destroying any aggressive automatons they encounter. As they travel, the duo meet Eli the Deserter, a person who lives in the wilderness. They tell Fern about a battle going down at a laboratory, and how they heard an explosion from that direction. Fern and Puck move past Eli and come face to face with this floating woman, who Fern recognizes as Maya. Maya begins to yell at Fern, accusing her of setting off an explosion. Fern tries to explain her actions to Maya, but fails to convince her. Maya says she should have acted on her suspicions of Fern from the beginning. Fern, who's lost all remorse, tells Maya that they were never on the same side. Maya doesn't believe it, but after hearing Fern's silence, she lets go of her restraint. Maya flies away, activating the spiked wheel automaton, Bonnie. Fern fights Bonnie, shooting at the machine as it jumps around trying to kill her, until it eventually uses its grappling hook to strike from new angles. Despite this, Fern manages to destroy it, freeing Bonnie, a fairy. Bonnie tells the duo that she had been imprisoned within the machine and is thankful to have been released. As thanks, she decides to give Puck a blessing, which grants him the ability to turn into and be used as a grappling hook. So what's interesting about this grapple hook is that Fern can only attach it to fairy moss, which is a mystical plant that has started to grow within the world, signifying that the fairy world is beginning to return. Now in the real world, fairy moss is the nickname for a floating aquatic plant known as Azolla caroliniana, or mosquito fern. Now I found that interesting because the main character's name is Fern, and fairy moss is this thing within the game that is attached to basically the main mechanic of the game. So I'm like, oh, what's going on now? I mean, is this where you got the name from? Is Fern like her last name and her first name is Mosquito? I mean, yo, what's good? I'm Mosquito. How you doing? Oh man, that's stupid. After taking the time to learn how to use the blessing, Fern and Puck continue their climb up the mountain. Along the way, Fern uses the blessing to reach a secret area with a computer. On the computer is the same note that was featured in the intro. After reading it, Fern and Puck have a conversation, revealing that Fern is indeed Fairy, a changeling. I want to take this time to ask you to check the description where you'll find links to all of my social medias. On Twitter, I post about my videos, my manga, and other indie manga and webcomics I've been reading. On Instagram, I primarily upload commissions and panels about my manga, so please follow both of those. You'll also find the various places to experience my manga, Revenge and Justice. And if you'd like to know a bit more about it, then you should click on the card that'll appear in the top right corner. Thanks for clicking on this video, and let's get back into Rusted Moss. Changelings in European mythology were fairies that were exchanged with human children. So normally a fairy would steal a child and then replace them with a near human-like fairy. They would do this for a number of reasons, such as wanting a slave or wanting the love of a human child. Sometimes fairies would just steal children and adults because they could. Now this may sound strange, as fairies in modern culture have all been depicted as kind, benevolent beings. I mean, shit, all I know about fairies is when they were introduced in Pokemon X and Y because dragons were too strong. So So Pokemon is really my only experience with fairies. But unfortunately for us, the mythos behind fairies is a lot more sinister. For example, fear of changelings had extreme real-world effects. Many people during those time periods believed that children who were born disabled, unhappy, insatiable, and any other quote-unquote abnormal trait were changelings. And as the in-game lore described, the most common way to return your child was to harm it. This unfortunately led to many cases of child abuse and infanticide. And it's just kind of crazy how things like this can happen. This is something that people, back in the Middle Ages actually believed, and they were actually, killing off their children because they really believed that they were changelings and they wanted their original children back. As a person who's living in the modern era, you can look back on things like this and be like, oh man, that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. And you can believe in the fairies or, not believe in them without it going to like super extremes. But on the other hand, having beliefs that are super strong to the point where like you're able to justify it by, killing somebody or committing a crime, it still exists to this day. And it's kind of the same thing. The more things change, unfortunately, is the more things stay the same. So Fern and Puck eventually reach this area filled with ichor, a substance poisonous to fairies. Fern explains that ichor is the result of humans refining corrupted fairy magic. Ichor exists within Fae blood, and when refined, becomes a power source, but also becomes toxic to fairies. Fern remembers the people in the laboratory infecting Fae with ichor. Puck reveals that he too was one of those test subjects. From my research, I found that ichor is the blood of Greek gods and immortals, a sacred fluid that is so toxic to humans that it kills them instantly upon contact. It was heavily featured in the Percy Jackson books. Y'all remember them, right? The one with, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and he have to fight like Ares or something. I don't remember it exactly, but I definitely like the inspiration. The way that Rusted Moss uses it is basically like a one-to-one representation of it, and I like it. The duo traversed the ichor-filled area until they reached the room of another woman, Great Witch Amelie. Amelie says that Maya warned her about Fern's arrival. She shares her disgust of Fern and how she fooled everyone into thinking she was human. How Maya had convinced everyone that Fern was human right until the very moment she blew up the lab. How shocked Maya had looked when it all happened. Fern doesn't respond to Amelie's remarks. Instead, she declares her intentions. She's here to collect a piece of Titania. Amelie scoffs at the idea, revealing that Titania's pieces are what's keeping the Fae locked in Fairyland forever. Amelie tells Fern that the age of men shall continue, beginning the fight. Amelie flies on her broom, utilizing corrupted Fae to spew various pools of ichor in order to poison Fern to death. Near the end of the encounter, Amelie changes the arena, spreading copious amounts of ichor from all manners of direction. However, Fern still defeats her. Amelie is shocked that she lost, even with the power of Titania's piece. Fern collects the piece of Titania and leaves, hearing Amelie's last words: "The Fae steal our children, and we stole the world." There was one line within this boss fight that I found kind of funny, and I don't know if it's supposed to be a reference to what I think it is, but during the third phase, where she changes the whole stage, Amelie says, "Block this overhead," which is funny if you play fighting games because overheads are kind of difficult to block. I don't know if that was purposeful. Whoever, if whoever did that dialogue, you on like Street Fighter or Guilty Gear, just hit your boy up, man. I'm lying. I don't play fighting games no more. Too much stress, dog. Amelie's remarks before and after the fight actually gives us a bit more information about Rusted Moss lore. As I said before, fairies are not nice creatures. One note found in a secret area gives us an idea of how cruel fairies could be. I saw it once upon a plain. Fairies eating the carcasses of misled travelers. Young Nell had asked what a group of fairies is called. It is a malevolence, my child. A malevolence of fairies. Reading this makes it clear what life was like living with the Fae, and it was only natural that humanity would find a way to fight back. In another secret area, a piece of lore speaks on the way that humanity did just that. All Fae do know to beware the iron cold. Humans hung horseshoes upon their doors and blocked us from crossing their thresholds. Just like when Pokemon introduced the fairy type in X and Y, fairies and Rusted Moss are weak to steel. Well, more specifically iron. I had read somewhere that fairies lost their power and could even be hurt by iron and steel, so they were deterred by it. In fact, it was believed that iron deterred all manners of supernatural creatures, which is why people often hung horseshoes on their front door to prevent those creatures from entering their homes. This weakness to iron also brings up another cruel act in humanity's effort to fight the Fae. Along Fern's journey, we fought all manner of mechanical enemy, creating created to combat the threat of fairies. As Fern is Fae, these machines seek to kill her in any number of ways. In another secret room, a computer gives us details on the autonomous nature of these mindless drones. The new experiments were a success. Machines can now be controlled by a bound changeling. This should work for Fae in general. The iron is unpleasant for them, but their magic heals them by reflex, a constant source of energy. The older way was much more inefficient. I can't wait to tell Nell. So basically, inside of all the enemies that we've been fighting so far are trapped changelings, which would explain why every time Fern kills them, she's granted magic energy which she can use to heal herself. Now this isn't a new concept because we saw that Bonnie, the fairy, was trapped within a machine, and hell, even in fucking Sonic the Hedgehog, you know, they were trapping animals inside machines. But it doesn't make it any less like messed up still. Like, I understand that, you know, humanity had to do what it had to do, but that's still just kind of cruel and unnecessary. Like, on one hand, from what the lore has told us up to this point, it's like, yeah man, these fairies are really like cruel and messed up, and they will just do whatever the hell they feel like it because they can, you know, so you gotta do something. But on the other hand, it's like taking changelings and like having them basically just be in constant torture the whole time, and then having me, Fern, go and kill them and use their magic energy to heal myself. Something about it is just messed up, man, you know? Like, I can't really be on anyone's side at this moment. Fresh off of Amelie's defeat, Fern and Puck continue their climb up the mountain through the factory roof. The two have a conversation about how far humans have come using Fae magic. Puck tells us that humans originally had no magic, and now they have witches. Fern agrees that the world is indeed changing, so much so that magic is returning and is now accessible to humans. She also explains that Titania's pieces make these magic-using humans even stronger. The two of them once again agree to find the seer, who will know what to do about this situation. Fern and Puck finally arrive before a tall, scary-looking Fae, the seer. Fern explains what she did to the humans' lab and how they now use Titania's pieces to strengthen themselves. The seer asks her why she destroyed her home, but Fern denies that it was ever her home. The seer then alludes to the fact that Fern was not always a changeling. Which, can I just say, that is a crazy ass thing to slip in mid-convo, bro. What kind of narrative? This don't follow no like 5-point structure or nothing, bro. Ain't no rising action within this conversation, bro. I mean, that's like Grandpa Gohan going like, yo, Goku, what's good, my boy? How you doing? How you been? You been doing alright? Okay, that's great. By the way, you're one of the last members of a dying warrior race that came from outer space. But yeah, nah, what's good, man? How you doing? How's the family? Like, bro, that shit should not be something that you should just sprinkle mid-conversation like that, bro. That is some like episode 25 shit right there, bro. But the seer mentioning that Fern wasn't always a changeling kind of gives me the idea that, I don't know, Fern might be like the offspring of like a human and a fairy, just like natural or something. So I don't know how Fern could have been once human and then all of a sudden be fairy. It's kind of strange, but we gon' get the answers when the game drop. After the seer's crazy ass revelation, Fern decides to quickly change the subject, presenting a piece of Titania that she took from Amelie. The seer is happy to see it and instructs Fern to collect the other pieces so that the Fae can return to the world. The seer grants Fern a super jump and a spell which grants them fast travel, before informing the duo of another piece of Titania that she senses in the west. So a little mid-recording note here, Titania is actually pronounced Titania. So anytime I said Titania before, just imagine me saying Titania. Alright, thank you. Titania in Rusted Moss is depicted as a human-like figure whose body was separated into 6 pieces. From everything we've learned through lore and Fern's adversaries, these pieces of Titania seem to be some form of key that unlocks the seal on Fairyland, home of the Fae. In Shakespeare's play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Titania is the fairy queen, married to the fairy king Oberon. However, in the fairy tale novel series, The Sisters Grimm, Titania and Oberon have 2 children, Mustard Seed and Puck, who is most known for his shape-shifting ability. I don't know about you guys, but when I figured that shit out, mind blown, bro. I was sitting there like, bro, did I just crack the fucking code? Do I know the whole plot of Rusted Moss now? Am I him? Is that me? Am I him now? Like I said before, it just feels really good to look up stuff and see where some things inspiration comes from. But other than that, Puck and Mustard Monster Seed are in A Midsummer's Night Dream, but they are not the children of Titania and Oberon. Puck in the play is like this jester who serves Oberon. But when I was originally doing my research on Titania, the wiki for the Sisters Grimm showed up, and that's how I found out about Puck being her son in the books, which I found interesting. I don't know if Rusted Moss is going to go the Sisters Grimm direction, or if they're just going to treat Puck as the jester for Oberon, but either way, Puck is not just like some random character that's just tagging along with Fern. Puck is going to have some kind of like important role within the story, and I guess you could have assumed that, but now knowing the mythos, and now knowing a version of the mythos via the Sisters Grimm, I can see where the story can go based on that. Titania, being the fairy queen, would also make sense as to why her pieces are able to enhance magic, even for humans, you know, which kind of begs the question, who tore apart Titania? Like, Titania is a person. You know, did you just like kill her and just tear her apart? That's kind of gruesome, man, but honestly, with what we've seen with the lore, I wouldn't be surprised, dog. I really wouldn't. With new guidance from the seer, Fern and Puck head west towards the next piece of Titania. When they reach their destination, they find Maya waiting for them. Maya pleads with Fern to stop her search for Titania's pieces. Maya tries to appeal to Fern's humanity, saying that she still considers Fern her sister, even if she is a changeling. She begs Fern to come home so that things can return to normal. Fern refuses again, telling Maya that the age of men is supposed to come to an end, and the only thing keeping humanity alive are the pieces of Titania that they stole. Maya realizes that Fern has made up her mind. Now without a machine, Maya pulls out a gun of her own, and the fight between the two sisters begins. The fight is intense, as the sisters rain down bullets upon one another. Maya makes use of her piece of Titania, summoning a large pool of ichor that covers the floor. She begins to fly and teleport around, attacking with a greater intensity than before. Fern manages to overcome this onslaught and finally defeats her sister. Maya collapses, then suddenly flies into the air and fires a massive beam of magic, killing Fern. All that's left is Maya's final words. "I'm sorry, Fern. I'm doing this for humanity. Don't come back." And that was the end of the Rusted Moss demo. Now before we head to the conclusion, I just got a couple of things to talk about the game, Rusted Moss. I have to say, developers, y'all are real brave, and I mean real brave, to have us play as an antagonistic protagonist, especially with all the lore provided. How are you gonna stick me with Fern, this fairy, and all the entire time I'm playing the game, all you're telling me is, yo, fairies are just fucking up humans, they are stealing kids, they eating humans, and I'm supposed to sit here and fight as a fairy? I mean, wow, that's kind of insane for you to do that to me, man. Cause now, like, I'm feeling bad. You real lucky this game has a great gameplay loop. The grapple hook is really holding this game together. Like, I can guarantee you ain't nobody sitting there and be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe the fairies are right. I mean, fuck humanity, man. Y'all should be able to just fuck with humans whenever you feel like it, dog. You know? I just found that whole thing kind of crazy, but it's actually very interesting. And I sincerely hope that this game is able to show both sides of the war, basically. I want to know more about the fairies and like why they do what they do. You know, give me something compassionate. Let me learn more about the fairies so I don't feel bad bringing about the end of the age of man. You know what I'm saying? I feel like you can do something very interesting with this narrative where you have these two opposing forces and you as a player are like kind of stuck in between them maybe. But you have to make both of these sides feel very compassionate. At some point be like, yo, these fairies is absolutely correct. And I also have to be like, yo, these humans are also correct. When you're able to have a person believe in both opposing forces, that's excellent writing right there. Now what I don't want to happen is for Fern to have like a massive change of heart after she meets like a couple of people and then she finally wakes up and is like, maybe I am doing the wrong thing. Like, nah, Fern, you was talking real hot. Whole game talking about the age of man must end. Don't half an hour in, 20 minutes in, be like, you know what? I met one baby and now I think humanity is cool again and I'm gonna fight against a fairy. No, I wanna have your conviction and keep it the whole way. Don't do a massive heel turn on me. Give me some interesting and uniquely narrative. Come on. I don't mind Fern's goals because she actually believes in them. You just have to make the player believe in them as well. That brings us to the second thing, which is the seer's mention of Fern not always being a changeling. But again, crazy thing to just sprinkle into a sentence, but I think one more piece of lore within Rusted Moss actually helps to shine some light on what the seer is saying. With the beloved child's gift, we Fae return to our world to bide our time until the age of men ends in rust. This piece of lore here is alluding to the fact that Fern is a child of prophecy. It's pretty much well known that children of prophecy are able to pretty much do damn near anything. So maybe she was born a regular girl and then one day became a fairy. She's a child of prophecy. At least that's what I'm thinking. So that's something to think about, and I think this piece of lore definitely sheds some light on it. And lastly, I have to talk about the cruel methods used by humanity to fight the Fae, and just kind of ask the question, like, how far is too far, you know? Using the changelings in the robots, that's a little bit too much for me. Like, I want to be on humanity's side, and I understand that, you know, drastic measures have to be taken because the enemy is also doing drastic things. They have all of these supernatural abilities, so you know, I know that you have to do whatever it takes. In a lot of movies, like whenever humans have to fight against like some kind of supernatural entity, there's always the idea that there is something that is too far that you can't do. Once you pass that threshold, then you know, you start to lose morality, and emotions and morality is kind of what makes us human, and you know, that kind of thing. Rusted Moss is set to release in spring of 2023. You can play the Rusted Moss demo right now on Steam. They added a new like time attack area to it, and it even has a level editor. If you've made it this far in the video, you've probably enjoyed some aspect of the game, so I definitely recommend you to wishlist it on Steam so you can know exactly when it releases, and of course play its demo. I want to give a big shout out to the devs, FaxDoc, Happy Squared, and Sunny Days for making Rusted Moss. I appreciate all of the inspiration you pulled from the various myths. Being able to see something in the game and look it up and find supplementary material about it was a great experience for me. Lastly, I'd like to shout out Nekotami Channel. They're a Japanese YouTube channel that streamed a Rusted Moss demo. All of the game footage in the video is going to be from that channel. They were the only ones that I found on YouTube that had found all the pieces of lore, so thank you for that. They seem to stream pretty regularly, so if that's your kind of thing, then please go and support them. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, leave a comment, and if you like what I did here, please subscribe for more. And if this was your first time hearing about Rusted Moss, share this video around, and when you do, make sure you let them know that God City and put you on. I hope to see you again.